June 1944, Normandy bocage region. An ordinary telephone wire, weighing a mere 8 ounces and thin as a hair, was about to cripple a 56-ton German steel behemoth. This is not fiction. This is not a Hollywood movie. This is a declassified, almost unbelievable story. A combat engineer with a desperate and absurd idea. How in 3 seconds he managed to halt the most fearsome weapon of World War II. To understand this, you must first understand the monster. You must know the Tiger tank. When the Tiger first appeared on a battlefield, it shattered the confidence of both the Allied and Soviet forces. It wasn't a tank, it was a mobile fortress. A 56-ton Predator designed for one purpose: to dominate the battlefield. Its development began in 1941 after the German Army's first encounters with the Soviet T-34 and KV-1 tanks. Shocked German engineers were ordered to build an indestructible heavy tank. They succeeded. When production began in August 1942, it was the most sophisticated and lethal land weapon on Earth. Look at its armor. The hull front was a solid 100 millimeters of hardened steel. The turret front was 120 millimeters thick. The side armor was 80 millimeters thick. For the crews of the American Sherman tanks, these numbers were a death sentence. The Sherman standard 75 millimeters gun could not penetrate the Tiger's frontal armor at any range. Not at 1,000 meters, not at 500 meters, not point blank. The shells would just bounce off. Allied tankers established a grim calculus of survival. To be sure destroying one Tiger, you had to be prepared to sacrifice 5 Shermans. 5. Imagine you are a crew member in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd tank. You know your mission is essentially to die. So the 5th tank might get a lucky shot from the rear against the Tiger's thinner armor. Allied tankers called long-range engagements with the Tiger suicidal. They were ordered to run, hide, or call for air support that might never come. This spawned Tiger phobia, which paralyzed entire Allied divisions. Then there was its gun. The heart of the Tiger was a legendary 88 millimeters KWK-36 cannon. This wasn't just a tank gun. It was a modified version of the famous Flak 88 anti-aircraft gun. The 88 was already notorious for shredding Allied bombers from the sky and annihilating British tanks in North Africa. Mounted on the Tiger, it was a sniper rifle. It could punch through 100 millimeters of sloped armor at 1,000 meters. It could slice through a Sherman's frontal armor at over 2,000 meters, a distance exceeding a mile. A Tiger crew could stop, spot an Allied column, and destroy 5 Sherman before the Americans even realized they were in range. The Tiger was safe. The Allies were helpless. Each Tiger was a masterpiece of lethal engineering. Each cost over 650,000 Reichsmarks and required 300,000 man-hours to build. Germany couldn't afford to lose them. The Allies couldn't afford to face them. It had a 700 horsepower Maybach engine, capable of rotating the massive turret 360 degrees in under a minute. It could climb a 35-degree slope and ford water 1.2 meters deep. By any measure, it was invincible. Was it really? Every legend has a secret. Every monster has a weakness. And the Tiger's weakness was hidden in its exquisite design. Look at the Sherman tank. It used simple, vertical wheels, easy to manufacture and replace. Now look at the Tiger. It used a complex, interleaved, overlapping road wheel system. 9 wheels per side, overlapping in 3 rows. This was no accident. It was a deliberate, brilliant design by German engineers. Why? To distribute weight. To prevent a 56-ton tank from sinking into soft ground, engineers needed to spread its immense weight over the widest possible track area. This overlapping pattern distributed the pressure perfectly. It gave the Tiger a ground pressure even lower than many light tanks, including the Sherman. This meant the Tiger could travel over muddy, soft ground where simply designed tanks would bog down. It also gave the crew an incredibly smooth ride, improving firing accuracy on the move. In theory, it was perfect on the battlefield. It was a maintenance nightmare. This refined complexity was the Tiger's Achilles heel. Think about those overlapping wheels. What happens when the tank drives through mud? Mud gets trapped in the gaps. On the eastern front, Tiger crews face a daily hell. The gaps between the wheels would fill with thick Russian mud, which would then freeze overnight into solid blocks, locking tracks, rendering the tank completely immobile. Crews had to spend hours every morning under threat of snipers, desperately chipping away the frozen mud from the running gear with crowbars and blowtorches. In the desert, the problem was sand. Sand grains wore down the rubber rims that cushioned each wheel, eventually shaking the suspension apart, and repairs were a disaster. To replace one inner road wheel on a Tiger, crews first had to remove up to 8 outer wheels. A job a Sherman crew could do in 20 minutes with basic tools took a Tiger crew half a day and required a specialized heavy crane. This complexity had catastrophic consequences. More friction, more points of failure, more chances for debris to jam the mechanics. It was a system designed for a perfect world, not for the blood and mud of total war. For days after the landing on Omaha Beach, a 23-year-old electrician from Pittsburgh noticed this flaw. His name was Corporal James Mallister. He wasn't an armor expert. He was a combat engineer with the U.S. 1st Infantry Division. His task was clearing obstacles outside the town of Magny. There, he saw it. An abandoned Tiger tank, out of fuel, engine dead. Mallister had only seen a Tiger once before. He climbed onto the cold armor, touched the tracks, counted the wheels. He measured the gaps with his hands. He noticed something the tank's designers, in their pursuit of perfection, had overlooked. The overlapping road wheels created narrow channel between their edges, vertical spaces where the wheels almost touched but didn't. Each gap was about 70 millimeters wide, just wide enough for a wheel to rotate, but narrow enough to trap an object of a specific size. He saw the evidence. A small rock lodged between 2 wheels had cracked one wheel's rubber tire. A piece of chain caught in the drive sprocket had torn 3 track links before the crew managed to cut free. Mallister, the electrician, understood systems and tension. He felt along the massive track assembly. Each track link weighed 5 kilograms, the entire track on one side nearly a ton. Once this massive mass was in motion, it generated immense momentum. It resisted stopping. But Mallister realized if something jammed this mechanism, that unstoppable momentum would amplify the damage, tearing the machine apart from the inside before the driver could react. He filed this observation away. It was just a curious footnote in a long, brutal day. 3 weeks later, his company was dug in along the hedgerow south of Corentin. That curiosity was about to become the only hope to prevent 32 soldiers from being annihilated. The terrain was the bocage, Normandy's hedgerows. They weren't shrubs, but massive earthen walls, for feet high, topped with ancient, thorny brambles. They divided the countryside into a claustrophobic maze. Every field was a fortress. Every gap in a hedge was a killing zone. The bocage turned a war of fast maneuver into a brutal war of attrition. Infantry advanced by the meter. Tanks were blinded. Artillery couldn't fire freely. The Allies were trained for open land and beach assaults, not for this environment. The hedgerows negated all Allied advantages. Armor couldn't maneuver. Air support couldn't see targets under the dense canopy. But the Germans knew this terrain. They had 4 years to prepare it. Every crossroads was pre-sighted for mortar fire. Every gap was covered by intersecting fields of fire from MG-42 machine guns. The Germans didn't need to win. They only needed to delay. Mallister's platoon had been fighting on the front line for 18 days. They had advanced 3.2 kilometers. They had lost 11 men. The replacements were new, green. Mallister and the other veterans taught them. Dig deeper, stay lower, move faster. On June 28th at 5:30 a.m., the Germans counterattacked. This wasn't a probe. It was a full-scale armored assault. They sent armored half-tracks with Panzer Grenadiers. And leading them were 4 Tiger tanks from the 101st Heavy Panzer Battalion. Intelligence had warned Tigers were in the area, but knowing they existed and facing them were 2 entirely different experiences. Mallister heard them before he saw them. The low roar of the Maybach engines, the metallic clatter tracks on cobblestones. The ground shook. His platoon was dug in along a sunken road, perpendicular to the German advance. 32 men, 2 bazookas, 3 Springfield rifles per foxhole. The orders were simple. Hold until relieved or overrun. No one expected them to stop 4 Tigers. The mission was only to delay. Holding for 30 minutes would be a success. Survival was optional. At 6:15, the firing started. 4 gray giants emerged from the morning mist. Their turrets turned slowly, their long 88mm barrels elevated, ready to fire high-explosive shells into the hedgerows. The lead tank fired from 200 meters away. The shell hit a farmhouse to Mallister's left, shredding stone, and wood into splinters. The blast shook dust from the hedges. A second Tiger fired, then a third. This was suppression fire. The sound was distinctive. The 88mm report was a flat, sharp crack, each shot followed by the shriek of the shell in flight, then the thunder of the explosion. They were firing high explosive, not armor-piercing. The Tigers weren't hunting tanks. They were clearing infantry. They didn't even consider Mallister's platoon a threat, just a nuisance. Their tactics were brutally methodical. Shell the hedge, advance 50 meters, shell again. Let the infantry mop up, then move to the next target. It was a meat grinder. Mallister watched the two bazooka teams crouched in their foxholes. They were the platoon's only anti-tank weapons, and they were useless. The M1 bazooka could, under ideal conditions, penetrate 75mm of armor. Effective range, 100 meters. The Tiger's frontal armor was 100mm, hardened and sloped. Even a perfect hit at point-blank range might just ricochet. The only weak spots were the engine grates and the lower rear hull. To hit those, you had to let the 56-ton monster pass you, then stand up behind it, and fire a machine designed specifically to kill you. None of Mallister's comrades had that chance. The Tigers would blast the hedges to splinters, then their machine guns would finish any survivors. Mallister looked at the sunken road. It was about 4.5 meters wide. The soil was hard, rutted by farm carts. It was the only path in this part of the bocage that could support a Tiger's weight. The hedgerows on either side were too thick, the earth too soft. Anything heavier than a half-track would bog down within 6 meters. The tanks had to advance down this road, single file, at walking speed, blind to their flanks. Mallister had seen bazooka training. It worked on a Panzer IV side. It was iffy against a Panther. Against a Tiger, it was suicide. He looked at his own hands. They were clutching a spool of communication cable, 90 meters of braided steel wire, standard field telephone line, 3.2mm thick, tensile strength rated for 90 kilograms, utterly inadequate for stopping a tank. The cable was for communication, not combat, but that wasn't what he needed it to do. He remembered the abandoned Tiger, the cold steel, the gaps between the wheels, the crack caused by that lodge stone, the near-ton weight of the track, assembly, and its momentum. The idea was absurd. A thin wire against 56 tons of armor. But a thin wire could jam. That was his theory. If the wire got caught between those interleaved road wheels, if the angle was right, if the tension was sufficient, it might just jam the mechanism, lock the track, paralyze the tank. It was a slim chance, but the alternative was certain death. Mallister ran. He sprinted 50 meters down the sunken road, staying low so the Tiger gunners couldn't see him. The road curved slightly, creating a blind spot. He found what he needed. 2 stout hedge posts on either side of the road. They were weathered oak, driven deep into the ground. The posts were solid. Solid enough. He tied one end of the cable to the left post. He wrapped it 3 times. He tied a triple fool's knot, a knot his father taught him for securing wires, a knot that wouldn't slip under strain. He pulled the cable taut across the road, at ankle height, about 20 centimeters off the ground, low enough to catch the Tiger's running gear, high enough not to drag in the dirt. He tied the other end to the right post. Same technique, 3 wraps, maximum tension. When he plucked it, the thin wire hummed, taut, in the shadows of the morning hedge. He was almost invisible. He had 90 seconds before the lead Tiger reached his position. Mallister scrambled back to his foxhole. He didn't tell anyone. No time to explain. He just waited. The lead Tiger entered the sunken road at 6:20. It moved at walking speed, 4 kilometers per hour. The commander's cupola was open. An officer in black pansy uniform was half exposed, scanning for threats. The tank was 20 meters from the wire. Mallister held his breath. The left front drive sprocket hit the wire. Physics took over. The wire didn't break. The post didn't budge. The cable caught on the bottom edge of the third road wheel. The tank's forward momentum pulled the wire up and in. It wrapped around the wheel. 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns. The Tiger's intricate, interleaved wheels formed a self-feeding trap. As the wheel turned, it drew more wire into the mechanism. The wire jammed between the second and third wheels. The wire wedged into the narrow gap. The wire bit into the rubber. It found purchase. The tension increased exponentially. The wire locked the mechanism solid, like a chock. With every turn, the wire wound tighter. The wheel seized completely. The entire left side track assembly locked up. The right side track kept turning. The Tiger tank veered violently to the left. The driver instinctively stomped on the throttle. It was a wrong decision. The Maybach engine roared. 700 horsepower tried to drag the locked track forward. The right track dug a deep trench in the road surface. The Tiger slewed sideways, rotating 15 degrees in 2 seconds. Something in the running gear broke, not the wire. The wire held. First, the suspension arm failed. Then, a mounting bracket. The Tiger jolted to a violent stop. The engine screamed, and the driver quickly shut it down to prevent further damage. The Tiger tank sat motionless in the sunken road, tilted 15 degrees to the left, completely blocking the path of the 3 tanks behind it. The commander stood in his cupola. He shouted into his radio. Mallister didn't understand German, but he recognized the tone. Panic. The commander was reporting his tank was immobilized. Cause unknown. Track damaged. Road blocked. The Germans were trapped. The road was too narrow for the following tanks to reverse or turn around. They couldn't go around the lead Tiger either. The hedgerows on either side were 1.2 meter high earth walls. The ground beyond was soft. A Tiger trying to climb the wall would either bog down or throw a track. They couldn't abandon the vehicle. Military regulations forbade leaving combat-capable armor to the enemy. For Tiger tanks were lined up, trapped in a narrow lane, with American infantry dug in on both sides. It was a nightmare scenario from German armor tactics. The commander of the 2nd Tiger tried to push the paralyzed tank aside. He closed within 5 meters, lowered his dozer blade, and gunned the engine. The 2nd Tiger's engine roared, track spinning, digging up the road surface. The disabled tank didn't move. After 30 seconds, the 2nd Tiger's tracks began to slip, rubber tires smoking. The commander gave up, lest he damage his own vehicle. The Germans were now stationary targets. Their position was fixed. At 6:26, Mallister's lieutenant had already called in a fire mission over the radio. Coordinates transmitted. 3 batteries of 105mm howitzers confirmed. The trap was set. The bait was taken. The real hunters were on their way. The target wasn't the Tigers themselves, but the infantry supporting them. At 6:30, the first airburst shells landed. They exploded 6 meters above the hedges, showering down thousands of red-hot shrapnel fragments. White phosphorus rounds ignited the dry vegetation, creating a choking, burning smoke. For the Panzer Grenadiers hiding in the hedges, it was a slaughter. They broke. They ran. Within 2 minutes, the Tiger tanks were isolated, without infantry. They were blind and vulnerable. Their mighty 88mm main guns were useless against targets they couldn't see. Now any determined infantryman could approach from the dead angles and destroy these multi-million Reichsmark machines with a satchel charge. At 6:45, a Sherman platoon arrived. 4 M4A1 76 tanks, equipped with a 76mm high-velocity gun, longer barrel, higher muzzle velocity. This weapon could penetrate 100mm of armor at 500 meters. The Sherman commanders knew the Tigers' location, knew they were immobilized, knew the German infantry had fled. They didn't drive into the same trap. They flanked it. They maneuvered through bocage gaps the Tigers couldn't pass. The Shermans were lighter, with simpler suspension and narrower tracks. They used the terrain against the Tigers' over-engineered perfection. At 7 a.m., for Shermans opened fire simultaneously. They targeted the rearmost Tiger's engine deck. The thinnest armor on the entire vehicle, only 25mm thick. 3 76mm armor-piercing rounds penetrated. One hit the fuel tank. The Tiger erupted. Flames shot from the engine grills. Thick black smoke of burning rubber and oil. The crew had 15 seconds to escape. 5 crewmen got out. 2 were on fire, rolling in the dirt, screaming. At 7 o'clock, the remaining Tigers surrendered. Crewmen raised their hands, tying white undershirts to their radio antennas. 3 Tigers were trapped in the narrow lane. American armor to their rear. American artillery on target. American infantry flanking them. No infantry support. No room to maneuver. No chance of winning. Surrender was the only rational choice. The paralyzed lead Tiger was towed to a field workshop for analysis. American engineers swarmed over it. They photographed every detail. They inspected the running gear and found the wire. It was still wound around the road wheels. They needed a cutting saw to remove it. The wire had bitten so deep into the rubber tires, it even scored the steel beneath. The result was clear. Suspension arm broken, torsion bar cracked, mounting bracket bent. Total repair time, 12 hours. The Tiger was operational again that night, but it never returned to the front. Fuel shortages kept it idle for the rest of the campaign. In August, it sat in a depot south of St. Lo, waiting for fuel that never came. In October, advancing U.S. troops captured the depot. The Tiger was loaded onto a flat car and shipped to the Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland for evaluation. Mallister's commander put him in for a Bronze Star. The citation was brief, bureaucratic language praising an innovative action leading to enemy armor disablement. The medal was approved in August, awarded in September in a muddy field. Then James Mallister went back to work. After the war, he returned to Pittsburgh. He used the GI Bill to get an engineering degree. He worked as an electrician for 31 years, a union man, steady work. Married in 1947, 3 children. He died in 1989 from complications of lung cancer. He was 68. His obituary mentioned his military service in one line. Bronze Star recipient, combat engineer, served from Normandy to the Elbe River. It didn't mention the wire. It didn't mention the Tiger. His family knew he had fought, not the details. But the story circulated among combat engineers. After-action reports spread. The wire trap appeared in intelligence summaries. By July 1944, engineer companies in the European theater were carrying extra spools of cable, not for communication, but for traps. Some tried to replicate Mallister's success with mixed results. Under the right conditions, narrow road, solid anchors, surprise, correct angle, the wire worked. In mud, it failed. When the Germans learned to look for it, it failed. German field manuals were updated in August 1944. A technical bulletin included a warning about cable traps. Crews were ordered to dispatch a dismounted soldier ahead of the formation in close terrain to cut any suspicious wires. The countermeasure worked. By September, wire traps rarely worked. The tactical window was brief, just 3 months, June to August 1944, but its impact was documented. During that period, at least 11 Tiger and Panther tanks were immobilized by wire traps. They weren't destroyed, but they were stopped, forced to halt in exposed positions where they could be flanked or destroyed by indirect fire. The Tiger tank itself represented Germany's strategic dilemma. It was over-engineered, expensive, maintenance-intensive. It was tactically dominant but strategically irrelevant. Between 1942 and 1944, Germany produced 1,349 Tiger tanks. In the same period, the Soviet Union produced 57,000 T-34s. The United States built 49,000 Shermans. At that scale, quality could not compensate for quantity. The very interleaved road wheel design that made the Tiger famous was also its fatal flaw. It was optimal engineering for ideal conditions, but disastrous for the battlefield. When clean and well-maintained, they distributed weight perfectly. Once foul with debris, they locked solid. The bocage had mud, wire, and debris. The eastern front had winter frost and spring mud. North Africa had sand and grit. Every environment exposed the Tiger's vulnerability. The wire trap revealed a deeper truth about complex systems. They fail in simple ways. The more complex a design, the more fragile it becomes. The Sherman's vertical volute spring suspension was crude by comparison. 5 road wheels per side. No overlap. It was jarring, but it was modular, reparable, and resistant to fouling. A Sherman crew could replace a road wheel in 20 minutes. A Tiger crew needed half a day and specialized equipment for one inner wheel. The principle extended beyond armor. The Luftwaffe's Me-262 jet fighter was 100 miles per hour faster than any Allied plane, but its engines needed replacement after just 12 hours of operation. The German V-2 rocket was a technological marvel, but cost as much as a 4-engine bomber and was wildly inaccurate. Germany's wonder weapons were marvels of engineering and object lessons in impracticality. They won battles but lost wars. They proved that complexity without sustainability is a path to failure. The Allies won with simpler weapons and overwhelming numbers. The Sherman was inferior to the Tiger in a head-to-head fight, But America could build 50 Shermans for every Tiger Germany produced. Mallister didn't know this grand strategy. He wasn't a strategic analyst. He was an electrician who knew how machines failed. He saw the gap between the wheels and thought of how to jam it. He had no grand strategy, no complex analysis, just a man with 90 meters of cable and 90 seconds to act. Just a desperate calculation. If the alternative was certain death, any attempt was worth it. The turning point of the war wasn't the wire trap. It was logistics, industrial capacity, and mathematics. But individual actions mattered in local contexts. One paralyzed Tiger tank saved 32 lives at one hedgerow. The wire trap endured. It appeared in U.S. Army Engineer School training manuals as a case study in improvised anti-tank measures. It represented the essence of warfare beyond technology. Mallister never claimed to be an innovator. In a 1987 interview with a local newspaper, he said, "That morning, I just didn't want to die. The cable was in my hand. The posts were there. It seemed worth a try. I didn't know if it would work, but doing nothing definitely wouldn't work. Worth a try." Those two words summarize battlefield innovation across centuries. Most attempts fail. A few successful ones are remembered. Analysis becomes myth. The difference is often luck. If Mallister's wire had been 15 centimeters higher, the Tiger would have driven under it. If the posts had been rotten, they would have snapped. But the factors aligned. The wire held. The trap jammed. The column stopped. The Shermans flanked. The Germans surrendered. Mallister lived. Modern armor designers learned this lesson. Contemporary main battle tanks use fewer, larger road wheels. The M1 Abrams has 6. The Leopard 2 has 7. Simplified suspension systems prioritize maintainability over optimal ride quality. The lesson of the Tiger's failure was absorbed into the design of every tank that followed. Elegance has value, but reliability is essential. Complexity without robustness is a liability. Mallister's wire is preserved today. The Infantry Museum at Fort Moore, Georgia, keeps it in a climate control case alongside a type card explaining its purpose. Most visitors walk past it without a second glance. The wire looks utterly unremarkable, whether it's steel cable, rust spots, faded green fabric insulation. Nothing dramatic, but it stopped a machine designed to be unstoppable. It proved that 56 tons of armor, 100 millimeters of hardened steel, and 700 horsepower could be utterly defeated by 8 ounces of wire at the right point at the right time. It proved that every system, no matter how complex, has a vulnerability. The lesson isn't about the wire. It's about seeing a system for what it is, not for what its designers intended it to be. The Tiger's purpose was to dominate the battlefield, but it was also a collection of components under stress. Wheels, tracks, pins, and brackets, each one a potential point of failure. Mallister didn't attack the Tiger's strengths. He targeted a seam in its complexity. He found the point where complexity became fragility.